as we start every episode of Frame Rate. This is Abe Epperson and Michael Slam shuddering into the microphone. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is going to be good. And the reason we're so excited here on Frame Rate, the show where we rate frames, is we have a fantabulous special guest here today. Please introduce yourself to the folks.
My name is Miles Gray, and I am on a second-rate podcast. That's all I can say.
Yeah, this one right now.
Oh, no, I was talking about my own. The Daily Zeitgeist, yeah.
AKA...
Ours is a third rate, so thank you for
Miles.
that. You know,
Miles
we thought we were fourth rate. You just upped us.
You guys have much more intelligent conversation about movies than what I'm basically screaming about, or Jack just being like, this movie did well at the box office.
You're right.
Well,
that
we'll
is
see.
why
Take
our
that.
viewership is so low. We're too sophisticated for our own good.
Yes, I am also smart.
And speaking of the finest, most sophisticated things in life, our topic today is a movie about three dudes stealing some gold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's Three Kings.
We three
1999.
kings be stealing the gold.
Mhm.
My friends all drive Porsches. I must make amends.
Mm-hmm.
Such a weird transition of like, where did that come? Why did he go to the Mercedes? Wasn't it the Mercedes Benz song? Oh Lord, once you buy a Mercedes Benz. But then the We Three Kings is the Christmas song, right?
It's a mashup.
Yeah.
Private
Spike
Conrad
Jonze,
Big.
he lost me on that one.
That's the first thing that blew my mind. This was the first viewing where I became aware that if you consider them like a Three Musketeers analog, they're D'Artagnan, if you will. There's that sophistication.
Mm-hmm.
Is this dipshit fourth guy who always hangs around and is like the comic relief, and it's goddamn Spike Jonze,
Yeah.
Conrad, yeah.
the director of many a fine film himself. And so I did look into it. He had never acted before. David O. Russell really had to push to get him in the role.
How did he even come within orbit of David O. Russell where he was like, hey, I want you to be in this movie?
I mean, online
they
it just
knew
said
each
they were
other.
friends.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. It is weird to me mentally to imagine why he was like, oh, and the role was written for him.
That was
he's
written
like,
specific. Okay.
hey, buddy, who must be a smart, well-spoken man because he's directed a bunch of great films. I wrote this like racist, horrible dipshit
He's from
character.
like Maryland, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I want you to play. And the studio's pushing back, but I don't care. Spike Jonze, you are this dipshit. It's just weird to me.
Well, he's heir to the Spiegel catalog fortune.
Wait, Spike Jonze?
Yeah,
is?
his real last name is Spiegel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so he changed his name because he's actually a rich boy.
So he changed his name to be
Maryland.
the same as a previous very rich famous person.
J-O-N-C,
Spike Jonze.
yeah. Wait, who's the original Spike Jonze?
He was a novelty songwriter from like the vaudeville era, but he was very successful.
But not Z-E. Jones,
Right.
Yeah.
more colloquially
His
spelled.
big hit was T for Two.
Oh.
And
Two for
I
T.
can't remember. That's it. So you know it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Let's get into this goddamn movie, which takes place 2 weeks after America signed a ceasefire with Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the first time under George Bush Sr. And we follow four. It's always weird to
I
me
know.
that there's four of them.
Yeah.
We follow four soldiers who go rogue and decide now is the perfect time to loot the country. Instead, they get embroiled in rescuing civilians, and then the thrust of the movie becomes, are they going to rescue the civilians? Should we have been in Iraq? As George Clooney says kind of sweatily at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just tell me what we did here. What did we even do here? So please, as the guest, just start us with buckshot impressions.
What
of
do
the
you think of the movie? Why do you
What's your
think it?
history with the movie? Why'd you pick this movie?
I don't know why. I think I've always been like a huge military film buff. And this was like a super stylized film. Like at the time, I remember the marketing was really slick. Like, this ain't your granddad's war movie kind of shit. And I don't know, like my mom, like she gets screeners and stuff. So as soon as that tape came, it was like I missed it from being in the theater, and then I told my friends like, I have Three Kings on VHS, dude, come through. And then we just wore the fucking tape out, like just watching it constantly. And I don't know why. I think part of it is just laughing at Spike Jonze's character. And at the time I was like, oh, this is an interesting movie. And then like as the years go on, then 9/11 happens, and then you get a little more like perspective, and you're like, oh, some parts aren't aging that well. And I just kind of, the sort of like super stylized filmmaking I liked from David O. Russell, and I think that's what kind of got me as like this came out in '99, right?
Yeah.
So I was like 15. I thought it was like, oh, this is why. Like, how do I do this in iMovie when I make my like shitty little movies?
What's my Three Kings?
Yeah, exactly.
Would it surprise you that Bill Clinton, after seeing the movie, like made his entire staff like sit down, like he had a like, we gotta watch this.
I
movie.
heard that. Yeah.
Oh shit! So I'm like Bill Clinton.
You're like the Bill Clinton
dude, get in here.
of your little circle. Of
Yeah,
friends you
no,
gotta
that
go.
makes sense.
You are constantly trying to get me to blow you
Yeah.
in your office.
And
but-
smoke weed and put stuff up your butt.
You play good sax, though.
Yeah.
And that's how this story actually unfurls, is up the
Is
butt.
up the butt. Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. That's a good
Much like a
segue.
cigar.
Did
They-
you want to
they-
talk about the ass map?
Well, I mean, just that it's the inciting incident.
That's how they find the
one
treasure
of them.
map,
They find an Iraqi with like a map in his butt, and then they like hide it from the brass.
Yeah.
Because they realize it's probably the Kuwaiti gold that Saddam stole.
I do like the exchange right when they see the map. Vig says to Troy Barlow, Mark Wahlberg, "So you figure he ate it?" And Mark Wahlberg says, "No, it wouldn't come out all perfect like that."
Also, it's also one of the worst butt hiding jobs I've ever seen.
Like,
Right,
yeah,
he
'cause
could-
that would fall out.
I was wondering. Okay, I'm glad everyone had this thought.
Yeah, like in retrospect, after trying to boof many kinds of things,
Yeah.
I was like, "Yo, that's a failed jail wallet
You're
job
an
if I've
amateur.
ever seen one." Yeah,
Get that up your butt,
just
my friend.
fully. But
That
it,
is-
it probably wasn't even touching his butthole. It was probably just betwixt his cheeks.
Yeah.
That's actually how people describe you. They're like, that guy's really good.
Yeah.
Hiding stuff up his butt.
Exactly. That,
So
hey,
if
that's
you
why
need to
everyone-
do
yeah.
that, talk to Miles.
If you ever want
He's
to
the
go to a
man.
music festival, hit me up.
Well, I think, I guess I agree with your 15-year-old self. I think the reason you watched it over and over is it's goddamn engaging. Like, it's
Yeah.
entertaining. It really moves. A lot of plot points happen fast. I'm seeing Abe's eye rolls, which I'm excited about. And I do think the filmmaking is like top tier in the sense that these stylized choices all have meaning and are really, really cool and well executed. So now Abe can rebut that. Go.
I mean, it's hard to rebut that. All I'll say is my opening argument is that while it does have a lot of intelligence in terms of, like, for example, one of the ones is, so Archie, who is Wahlberg, right?
Archie is
sorry,
Clooney.
Clooney.
Clooney,
Clooney.
yeah.
Clooney talking to Chief. Specifically, the worst thing about a gunshot wound, provided you survive the bullet, is something called sepsis, infection of
Okay,
the
you're
blood.
jumping right to my favorite shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he says, that's right. This is where we go inside the body
The
cavity.
insert, yeah.
That's right. Say a bullet tears into your gut, it creates a cavity in the dead tissue. The cavity fills up with bile and bacteria, and you're fucked. So there is some intelligence there, because we all can see that that's not a very clouded veil over like what's happening in the Middle East. So he's doing things like metaphor, but like there's something so much about how what you guys brought up with the style. Like, let's take, for example, when we see the Four Kings introduction, it like freeze frames, which is just taken out of Italian neorealism.
Right.
It's nothing new. Guy Ritchie has been doing
It gives
this,
you one fact
you know?
each.
And
Archie Gates 2 weeks from retirement.
intro to the Kings is wants to be Troy
Bluto
Barlow.
later became governor.
Yeah, stuff like that. And it's these half-witty little things. They're not that funny to me. I can see how they could be funny, but I think there's something to be said about, like, people, when they saw this movie, felt it was new and fresh enough to their eyes that they were like, this is like crazy how unhinged this movie is. Can you even believe that they put that subtitle there? That's not how subtitles work. That I feel like he gets more credit for that than actually, like, that means something in terms of the films. Like, why, if you cut out those subtitles about each of those characters, do you lose anything other than the stylistic approach of,
I would
you
argue
witnessed it?
yes, unless you put the information in a line, because each of the things is information that immediately, without wasting any time, lets you know what the character's main motivation is going to be. Like, the reason Wahlberg is the most, I don't want to help the civilians, is because his thing said Mark Wahlberg, new father.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really effective, efficient way to be like, well, now we know why he's like that.
Yeah.
You get to cut out some expository
That's
dialogue.
fair, but we do learn all these things
That's
in the
incidentally.
movie.
That's true.
The only time I felt, and I also, watching it again, I felt it held up well. The only time I didn't feel that is Ice Cube's subtitled Chief Elgin taking a 4-month paid vacation from Detroit.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a weird, cheap joke so early in the movie.
Yeah,
when
like-
I visit Detroit semi-regularly. It's lovely.
Yeah, I
there's
love Detroit.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea is like he left one war zone for another.
Like he's better off here,
Yeah.
and it's like he's really not.
Yeah, it's
So the reason I think it does achieve not being your granddaddy's war movie and is through the use of visual meaning. For example, I knew I wanted to bring up compare that thing all war movies have done since Saving Private Ryan, where it goes into skip motion,
Right. Just
Shell shock.
dropping
and
frames
the
and stuff.
sound is like in this movie that is used exclusively not when guns are being fired at each other, but when someone's internal world is crashing down.
yeah.
And I just think that is like a clear use of meaning that subverts a trope, which is the exact kind of shit you like when the Coen brothers do it, Abe. Like when Archie Gates says, why are we here? What are we doing here? As cheesy as maybe, or like explicit as that might be.
Right.
Then the shot is just him standing up and like clenching his eyes and having a migraine, but it goes into that war skip motion. And I think that's cool. I'm like, yeah, because he feels like that right now, even though there's no tank nearby or whatever.
It's sad when like the way you're bringing up all the sort of stylized choices. It's precisely because at 15 I had no frame of reference for any of those things.
Totally.
So I'm like, of course this is the shit. That's why Snatch was my other favorite movie at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see the argument of
I
how
agree.
Snatch is also good. It's
Snatch is
different
also
podcast.
I love
a better
Snatch.
movie. But no, I'm not saying it didn't work on me. I'm just saying looking
Just
back
like
when
and
you look
watching
at it, you're like, this isn't new. This is
it was seminal. It was
Sure.
one of the first.
Generation Kill, I think, goes a lot to it.
Generation Kill, which is David Simon, creator of The Wire's
Right.
HBO miniseries. It's like a 7 or 8 part series that occupies the same kind of narrative where it's like, why did we go there? This is just filled with stupidity and incompetence. We shouldn't be here. We're doing more damage than we're not.
But of course, it's done in a Wire way where it's more like dense fiction than an action comedy.
I think that show is more true to its roots. Granted, it gets 8 hours to do what David O. Russell has to do in 2, but there's something I wanted to ask you guys about, like the broader steps of this movie and what your thoughts are now that we live in a post 9/11 situation and have seen some wars in this area, like what that means to you, because it still has white savior problems.
100%.
And
yeah.
so you're right, and I do think that the observation is on point, Mike, when you say that like Clooney's character definitely says like, what is the whole point of this? Which is a good thought, a good question to ask when we're there. But also he has this whole conversation where he's like, what's the most important thing in life? And then they go, respect. He's like, too dependent on other people. And then Conrad says, what, love? A little Disneyland, isn't it? The chief says, God's will. He says, close. What is it then? Necessity. As in people do what is most necessary to them at any given moment. And then at the end of the film, same kind of extension of that conversation. Load the people in the Humvee, all of the refugees. There's no room. Make room. What happened in necessity? It just changed. Like the movie doesn't seem to earn this jump from, God, we really fucked this up, to, well, at least we helped some people there. Even though we were thieves, it kind of like wants to say there's no honor among thieves, and then at the same time wants to say like, but the thief can change, which feels really bipolar to me.
To me, it reflects the complexity of the issues in that area, and I would say they do boil it down, but it's still not as like simplified as most movies would make this situation. Because I would say if you count the Saeed torture scenes with Wahlberg,
Right.
I think there, like you said, yes, there's white savior complex, but there's also moments where the guy says, you care about Kuwaiti children? Oh, are the Americans coming back to help Kuwaiti children?
Right.
And Mark Wahlberg says, no, they're not coming. So like there's admissions that, right, we know.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we were bad. We did bad. And like, I think obviously it's an attempt to be one shade more complex than just like patriotism. Or like, okay, it's a hell of a lot more sensitive than American Sniper.
Oh, yeah.
Which is
100%.
so fucking critically acclaimed.
Right.
And is just like, isn't it cool how Americans kill stuff?
Which is kind of, and Generation Kill has the same. Have you seen that?
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was like '06 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I
We had
mean?
some
Yeah.
time. You could learn a little bit more. But like, I think that even in our opening images of the four kings, I guess, they're singing "God Bless the USA," and he's got like Wahlberg's got the American flag around.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
all hammered.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
taking photos
They're pissing
that
everywhere.
today would be like embarrassing Instagram
Right.
photos.
Yo, 100%.
Like flexing with a gun in front of a flag.
Right.
Yeah,
So
with your
it-
T-shirt like wrapped on your head. as
So
if it was
that's
some
like
kind
our
of turban.
start point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
think the
from the
movie
get-go.
unabashedly, and they're constantly like casually racist. The movie is saying these guys all suck in
They
some
suck,
way.
yeah. And then it took. I mean, yeah, that's like the thing, especially those torture scenes. It did provide a moment where even if you were a totally ignorant human being watching it, for a second you're like, wow, wait, like, because most of the time you're
Yeah.
never hearing the perspective of the people who are on the receiving end of gunfire and like American
Right.
soldier films, where it's like, you know, I'm a father, you understand what's going on. And then even, especially the part where he was like, here's your fucking stability, my man,
Yeah.
and pours the oil down his
Pours
mouth.
the oil,
That
yeah.
fucked my head. As a kid, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I do love that
still
he
think
used a
it's amazing.
CD
Yeah,
to like lever his mouth open, so
Yeah.
as like basically as a funnel for the oil, which is kind of a statement because yet before he asked like, "What'd you do to Michael Jackson?"
right.
So like, and two of the main stars are musicians / at least pop artists. You know, so
Yeah, I want to quote that because I
Yeah, go ahead.
also think that's some amazing screenwriting because it starts so you're like, is this going to be just a weird like getting to know you as your torturer bit?
Right.
And it escalates so well. Tell me something, bro. What is the problem with Michael Jackson? Huh? The king of pop. Hoo hoo hee hee.
Yeah.
Your country make him cut off his face. He's king of pop to some sick fucking country. That's bullshit. You're the blind bullshit sick, my main man. Your country make the black man hate himself the same way you hate Arab and the children you bomb over here. That's not shit that was in mainstream movies in 1999.
No.
So like, I give it props for that. I think that those torture scenes really provide the weight. But I agree that it's still way more simplified than like real life is. Because they basically boil it down to, well, if we were going to go in, we should have stayed till the job was done. And the bad thing is that we're leaving because now the local people stood up to fight because we said do that.
Right, and we're like, hey,
and
we
now
got
we're
what we need.
abandoning them. And I'm sure there's political scientists who could come in and say, no, if we'd stayed longer, we would have just fucked it up worse. But that's the narrative they chose to. I mean, that's the narrative they present.
I think that that's super intelligent. I just think that it's undercut. I'm not saying that the movie doesn't have great things to say. It's just undercut by things like at the beginning when they first like head out after they got in the map and they're like gonna do crimes. They have that. They're shooting the footballs from the Humvee,
Right.
and they have that conversation about Warren Moon and Randall Cunningham.
Right, black quarterbacks.
Yeah,
right.
black quarterbacks, and they talk about how black guys can't throw the ball; they're running backs. And then, of course, at the end of the movie,
Yes.
he
Yeah.
throws and
Fucks the
explodes
helicopter
on
up.
a helicopter
Ice Cube
with
brings-
a C4 football.
Ice Cube brings down a chopper with a pass. Yeah,
Right.
forward pass.
So it seems like it's half like done with the irony of Shane Black and half like I have a real thing I need to say. And that is just weird. I'm just acknowledging, like, I'm not
Is
saying
it-
it's bad. I'm just saying that's weird.
Because that's definitely a way it differs from Generation Kill, and it was notable to me this time. It's pretty funny. Like,
It's jokey about everything.
it goes for jokes
Yeah.
more than I even remembered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't watched it for like 10 years, and I remember the CD and the oil
Oh,
being
yeah,
foresaid. I didn't remember like the Tarantino-ish banter about like what's the proper racist term to use.
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
like, I was like, this is a weird little like clerksy moment where they're just shooting the shit and trying to be funny.
Yeah.
That was interesting to me. I feel like no one's gonna help me out because you guys are against me in this. Can't possibly. But the one, I feel like I could drop more evidence about like film choices that did have meaning that
Yeah.
aren't just snatch. Because my problem with Guy Ritchie is the things he does don't have meaning.
Right.
But I don't understand why it's so highly saturated. And he paid, David O. Russell had to like argue for millions of more dollars so they could do a silver nitrate bypass on the film and ship those reels to
bypass,
theaters,
yeah.
which actually has trace amounts of silver on the film. So it like triples the amount it costs to export the film. So he cared a lot that like those shots where you see the sky looks like fucking aqua pool.
Right.
Why? Does that mean anything? Did anyone get anything from that?
I don't know. It's weird because for the same reasons you kind of say that there are moments where things don't feel earned or whatever, and because it's jokey, there are times where like those sort of aesthetic choices are almost lost on me.
But you just kind of wrapped up in it, and you can enjoy it for what it is. You don't need any meaning to come out of it necessarily.
No, it just felt like it just feels
totally.
like it's just pop art in a way. And I was
Yeah,
like, okay,
exactly.
that's what you're
It's
going
Andy
for.
Warhol.
And I couldn't go for anything beyond like you just wanted to give the Middle East this. That was your
Bright
look
colors
you wanted
look
to give
cool,
it. Right.
yeah.
Granted, they only shot in California, Arizona, and New Mexico.
Dude,
Right.
there is and then I looked into it and I looked like locations of shoot and it was true. This time watching it, they cut to a really tense part where they're like walking, trying to avoid getting caught with the whole caravan. And I was like, that's that fucking strip mine off the 210 East on the way to San Bernardino. And it totally is. Amazing.
Here's what I want to talk about the choices that you were mentioning, Mike, which is that I also have a kind of an agenda because I actually despise, as a director, I despise David O. Russell.
I despise him as a human being, which I want to get to.
And it's one of those choices that, a film that came out, since you mentioned Coen Brothers, a year later, Oh Brother, We're Out There,
Little film you might have heard of.
use the same bleach bypass process, but not by film. They did it with grading and digital. And it was like known as like the first time.
Film
and it looks
to do
amazing,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, this is now the golden standard. So that's craftsmen actually looking at what they have available. This is a guy who's tied to a way of being, a way of like, I want to be punk rock as fuck.
He wants to be Stanley Kubrick.
And he doesn't care if it matters. He just wants to yell at people all the time, to the point of, and there's this whole, you go on the Wikipedia page for this fucking movie and just look under the section that's like, I think it's just like conflict.
Oh.
It's just like, everyone hated him. There's obviously the I Heart Huckabees blow up that with Lily Tomlin
Everyone's
that went
seen it,
viral
right?
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
What the fuck do
He
you
is,
want me to do?
he is just a maniac.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
just a maniac.
Yeah.
And
It's
he fights for
delightful.
his vision, which is something a director should do. But when it's hard to rectify the decision-making process of like the studio being like, well, I'm just saying you could get the same kind of look if you did it through like a cheaper process. Here's a example of that already being developed.
And he
And
goes,
he's just
right.
No. And Spike Jonze is one of the leads.
Right. I'm gonna make him act.
no.
Okay, well, let's do a little David O. Russell block quick before we get back to the movie.
Sure.
But
Yeah, my all my distaste stems from the David O. Russell, the I Heart Huckabee shit.
Yeah.
I don't know any more other conflicts. So
He's
I'm
just
very
that-
excited.
did you ever see Michael Showalter, his web show?
like maybe a portion.
He did a great episode like the day after that released where he's having a casual interview like he normally does, and someone says a mild dig like "darn you," and he does a beat for beat recreate for the rest of the episode.
That's hilarious.
It's just the David O. Russell thing.
That is
for the rest of the
hilarious.
episode.
Definitely watch that video.
But yeah, if you haven't seen him yell at Lily Tomlin, it's rough and at the same time fascinating, and at the same time you're like, how can you be like that and get $48 million and get in charge of making the movie?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I didn't know this stretched all the way back to before he was famous. Like, he doesn't have that much clout during Three Kings, but this is shit from the Wikipedia pages they've said. David O. Russell never wanted George Clooney for the lead role, accepting him only after his first choices Clint Eastwood, Mel Gibson, Nicolas Cage, Jack Nicholson, and Dustin Hoffman all turned down the part, and Clooney lobbied for the role. He made it clear on set every day that he didn't want Clooney in the role. Clooney noted that, quote, there is an element of David that seems like he's always way over his head, and then he just flips out. He's vulnerable and selfish, and it manifests in a lot of yelling. Then after several takes, this is during the scene where the soldiers have to like take the people from the convoy and round them up and hurt some of them. He didn't like the way the guy was throwing one of the convicts. After several takes, Russell came to the extra and put him through the motions of the action. Some individuals present on the set state that Russell was simply marking how to convincingly act in the scene. However, Clooney and others think that Russell had violently thrown the extras to the ground just to get his anger out. Clooney recalls, quote, We were trying to get a shot, and he just went berserk. He just went nuts on this extra. Clooney approached Russell and began criticizing him again, coming to the extra's defense. The two began shouting at one another before entering a physical fight. After fighting in the dirt, second assistant director Paul Bernard was so fed up with the experience, he put down his camera and walked off the set, effectively quitting. He did not return. They had to replace him. Clooney concludes, will I work with David ever again? Absolutely not. Never. Do I think he's tremendously talented? Yeah. Russell offered a different view, saying, George Clooney and I are both passionate guys who are the two biggest authorities on set, and we're good friends to this day. George Clooney denies this.
Yeah.
Strong
And I don't know if
disagree.
it's an alternate or like a different scenario, but like another, or if it's the same one, but like Clooney was just super surprised because one of the extras, because like it's heat stroke and there's, had a seizure. And everyone was like, oh shit. And he like ran over to him and was like, are you okay? Clooney.
Yeah.
And when he looked over at David O. Russell was just like setting up another shot. Like
he was like, there's people that will take care of that.
Yeah. And he's just like,
That's a separate
which
incident.
is an amazing thing because I feel like that's exactly like what he's doing to his set is exactly the lopsided point
What
of the
America
movie.
did.
Wow, right.
Well, I mean, it's that he's trying to make a point that he himself is not obeying the laws of what he says is a good thing to do.
Do as I film, not
like,
as I do.
yeah, exactly. and it just is hilarious to me that he's just seems to be an asshole.
What kind of tactic, though, is that as a director to constantly remind one of your leads, I didn't fucking want you in this?
Yeah.
Like, in a way, it's just so... Is that his weird way of trying to motivate him? Or he's just really like, I don't care, and I'm just
Maybe.
going to act... I'll just put all my insecurities on the table.
That's what I wonder, but whereas like with Kubrick, I still don't think it's acceptable, but he's like, yeah, I was being a dick to Shelley Long or Duvall intentionally all the time
Right.
to get that broken, shattered
Sure,
performance
sure.
out of her. Lily Tomlin in the Huckabees scene, if you've seen the movie, you know what scene that is. She's like peppy and bubbly in that
Right.
scene. There's no way the right way to get that from her is to like scream at her for an hour. So I don't think he's doing directing stuff. I think he just
a
has
shitty dude.
problems. Yeah. Ice Cube said that he didn't mind it. He didn't conflict directly with David O. Russell, but he was like, it was cool how George Clooney and David O. Russell had this escalating tension because it really helped me be tense in the tense scenes.
Oh, shit, right. 'Cause-
And he's like, and they fist fought right before we shot the climax where the guy's lung collapsing and the people aren't going to
Right,
survive.
right,
And he's
right.
like, honestly, I've been on other movies where I'm like, could the director and the star have a fist fight right now? That would really like help my process.
Although it's funny, Clooney had another line about like, did he just do it with you, or does he do that all the like David O. Russell? Does he do that all the time? And Clooney was like, no, he wouldn't try that shit with Cube.
Yeah,
You
right.
know,
That's
like-
that's what
Quote
makes me
is,
think.
Cube's not going to take it. He's from South Central.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cube would probably just mush his face off. Like, just be like, get out of my face with this.
But here, okay, so just counterpoint. George Clooney is a notorious on-set prankster.
Right.
And when I hear that, I think, and that he like helps the extras and all his, I don't know, agree with most of his political leanings and his activism. So I'm like, seems like a good guy. But this prank seems too far for me. So Nora Dunn, who plays Adriana Cruz, the reporter, great actress. George Clooney, a notorious prankster, played a prank on Nora Dunn by putting an apple on the antenna of a Humvee and catapulting it into the back of her head. And I'm like, that's not a prank.
prank,
That's a
that's
really
assault.
painful,
Yeah.
surprising
Just throwing
attack.
an-
Yeah. That's like, yeah. He has like the YouTuber's idea of what pranks are. It's like sick apple to the head prank. Wait, so he put it on and then like cranked it back like a trebuchet or something?
Exactly. Dug an apple onto a Humvee antenna and shot it at her and hit his mark.
Which consultant showed him that? You know what I mean? Because I don't think Clooney's been around enough like Humvee antennas where he was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
watch this. Like, I'm sure one of the guys was like, you know what we used to
You
do
know
over
what we
there?
do?
Just launch it.
Launch it.
This is how we took down Kabul.
This is how we
With
do.
apples on
Yeah.
it.
That's how we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to me because like David O. Russell seems to be like, we're painting this picture of him where he's like fairly unhinged, where he's just like grabbing at things. He obviously has done a lot of cool things in this movie. I
Yeah.
love the milk scene,
Yeah.
which by the way, the extras didn't know that they were supposed to drink the milk, so they'd do it a second time and like
Yeah.
let it dry.
Oh, wow.
And stuff because he because of a failure of direction.
Yeah.
Just pointing that
Like
out.
he didn't tell the AD to tell the extras what to do.
Yeah. So, but that's a great. I love that sequence. It's a great metaphor because you have this like this the sand that's absolutely like nothing can grow on it.
Right.
Being
Sucks
nourished.
all the moisture away.
Yeah, being nourished by this thing that represents life, and people are like spooning it in their hands because they're so thirsty.
Yeah.
And getting sand in their mouth and like have it's like probably spoiled. Like it just is a very visceral thing. That's a good moment, but I also take that moment.
The whole sequence is dynamite.
It's really
so
well
intense.
done. Yeah.
Reminds me of the key scene in Nocturnal Animals. If you've seen
I
that.
want to ask you another question though, because this is what I'm putting everything in this concept of like it's bipolar. Like it does this really well. It does this really well. These two different things. How do they coalesce? How is this a movie? What do you guys make of the sequence with Cruz, the
reporter?
The reporter, when she's walking with Jamie Kennedy. They're looking for a story, which is a whole like
Jamie
B plot,
Kennedy's
which is
in
hilarious. Where because he wants to fuck her so bad, and like he's like pointing out these are the oil fields. This is what's going on here. Like a lot of people are arguing this.
I already done that
story. But then she looks at like the
pelicans
drowning.
in oil.
It's all so fucking horrible. And then just cries. What does that scene mean to you guys?
I don't know. I mean, I took it just as literally as possible, more in the sense that you go to a place like any sort of war zone, and you have to be, to a certain extent, shed your humanity to sort of operate within it. And then it clearly was like, I don't know, I think it just sort of helped balance her character or something, where it was just like, she's so hardened or whatever, and this is it. But it didn't, I kind of had the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I needed that, or if that it necessarily added anything for me, because to me it just felt like such like hitting you over the head with like, hey man, some shit still does get through,
right? And
you can be completely overwhelmed. But yeah, I don't know. It couldn't really.
Was it convincing to you? And a second question was it intentionally not convincing? If it wasn't convincing to her crying and her like feeling for that pelican, does she care about that pelican? Or
I think there's the possible interpretation that she means it's horrible that she worked so hard and hasn't gotten. Because if you remember, her Chiron is 5-time Pulitzer nominee
or Emmy,
Emmy nominee. That's all she wants.
Yeah, she's hunting that story.
So I thought that was a possible interpretation, as she means it's so goddamn horrible that I'm failing. But I prefer and choose Miles' interpretation. And I don't know that I need the moment, but I do like it. I've had that moment. I mean, I had it with 9/11, where I watched it on the news as a kid, but I was a kid and it was abstract. And then like a year and a half later, I was able to conceptualize and think about what it must have been like for various people in various situations, and then like wept and fell apart. And I think that does happen. It's like,
totally.
She's like, I need the story. These drowning birds are the story. That's not on the list. And then she's like, wait. This is real, though. These birds are drowning in oil. Right. It's just so goddamn horrible.
Right, it is.
And I just love Nora Dunn, so I thought her acting also sold it.
Yeah, like she's such a good actress that it made me think that it felt stilted to me. Like her performance felt very sudden.
And you feel like it must be intentional.
And I felt like it's almost like she was doing what you just said, and she does it to a plum, with a plum. But David O. Russell was trying to make with that section something else of it, and I don't know if that's true even to begin with, but if it was true, I don't even know what his intention would be, other than to say like she's human, but like, because the ending of that sequence, by the way, if you don't recall, is she like gathers herself together and just walks off.
Right.
So it's kind of like this rondo form. It's this like, I'm this normal human, I go someplace, and then I'm back to normal human that I usually am, which is not giving a shit about pelicans covered in oil. And I feel like that's what David O. Russell kind of is doing with the rest of the film, so that's why I think he's doing it with this scene, is he's saying like, yeah, we like to think about how horrible war is, but are we really going to do anything about it? No, you're just going to go about your fucking business and listen to...
No, they save a bunch of people and they give the gold back. They do something about it. That's the whole point of the movie.
That's the white savior complex thing that I don't
understand. It's not bad to...
They do good.
They
do good.
Okay, I agree. The white saviorism is a thing, and that I can't speak to it from a place of like knowledgeability and complexity. But if you're in the moment, they realize there's an immediate crisis to just some people, and they decide to use their authority to try and keep those people not die, make them not die.
Right.
Isn't that good?
That is good.
Okay.
No, sure. Objectively, if you distill it down to those facts.
And then
for
when
sure.
it comes to the point where they're like, and you have to give up the gold to save them, they're like, then we'll give up the gold. They're doing the good choices that you would want them to do.
So you're saying just so I can.
But I don't think the
If I
movie's
understand
saying
what you're
that
saying.
justifies the invasion of Iraq. Because I
Right,
think the movie's
right,
still
okay.
questioning they shouldn't have been in that location anyway. That's not their gold. Like, he should be at home working at a carpet store.
Right.
Not here with gold that was stolen from there and moved here. It's crazy.
See, I think that there's this kind of catch-22 element of the movie, because the end of the movie is they do the good thing, they give up the gold,
And I will
but
say,
then the post-credits are like, he works as a Hollywood consultant.
Well, karma rewards them very well.
Yeah, they have.
Right.
They might as well have got
So
their
it's a-
gold, so to speak.
Yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
They have great
It's
lives
kind of like
afterward, yeah.
saying, like, here's a shitty situation. Yes, they're only guilty by proxy. They don't want to be here either. They do a good thing by giving up gold, even though they were thieves.
If they could have kept the gold and the
They
people
would've.
alive, they would have
Yeah.
kept
Oh, hell
the
yeah.
gold.
You know, that's the whole thing with Clooney talking about necessity.
Yeah.
And necessity has changed. Now I need to
Now
save
the people
these people.
trump the gold.
Right.
And
but
I
then they
think
still
he is-
get like a great thing. Like,
But I think he is doing that. He, in particular, Archie Gates, is
Yeah.
doing that as a white savior thing. Like, when necessity changed for him, I get the strong impression that the necessity is for him to feel that he did anything good while he was here.
Yeah.
Even more than the abstract idea that my fellow men and women have dignity and need to be survived.
Right.
I think his arc is explicitly, oh, I can do something where I could go home and feel like at least I did a thing.
Right, because he was
A good
just having a
thing, yeah.
meaningless experience the
Yeah.
entire time.
What do you think, Miles? How should we feel at the end of the movie?
Ah, God, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I watched it again, I'm just like, oh, all right. Would have been chill if they just had the gold and saved the people. Like, that was the ending I think I wanted for them. Like, hey, you did it all.
Did the
But
tension work on you still, though? Like,
in that last scene?
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, but I think that's just a function of like good, like, you know, just the cinematic aspect of it got me like, oh man. And like, you know, Troy's like can't get his like chest wound valve open. And
Jim Gaffigan has to save him.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was like,
I was
what
like,
do I
that's
do?
fucking Jim Gaffigan.
There's so
Well,
many
hey.
good little
I
cameos
know.
in there. Alia Shawkat's in
This
there
is
as a
the
little
first
kid.
Yeah,
movie
that's
where
true. She's in it.
Judy
The daughter.
Greer and Aaliyah Shawkat ever met,
yeah.
and they're both on Arrested Development together
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw Arrested Development, I was like, I think that's the little girl from Three Kings. Like, that was my
Really?
first.
That's an amazing
For
pull.
whatever reason, her character really
That's
kind of
amazing.
stuck out to
Yeah.
me because there was something
It's
about.
a lingering shot of her as they describe like what happened.
No,
Yeah.
for real. And like, you know, her mom just gets offed right in front of her.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then she's got like two inexplicably
cast.
broken
Yeah.
arms or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, God. I think as also like watching it as a teenager, I was like, damn, like Shorty just like broke both of her arms somehow out there. Like, it's rough. Like, you know, from my
rough in
privileged
these
like
streets.
valley
I don't know where she's
point of
living.
view.
I wonder where
Yeah.
she skateboards.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems dangerous.
Should have rocked those wrist guards.
Oh, it
Mom.
really got me when the rebels are sniping at the tank and they reveal that the sniper's like
boy.
a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah.
and
they
does the
just-
same
they
Private
blow the
Ryan
fuck
tank
out of 'em.
ending.
Yeah.
Parker, get out! Yeah. It was, yeah.
I don't know what this means, but I thought it was interesting that the rebel leader guy is played by
Chad something.
Curtis
Curtis.
Cliff,
Curtis.
I think.
Yeah.
Cliff,
Cliff
yeah.
Curtis.
Cliff Curtis
Yeah.
from New Zealand.
Yeah.
And Captain Syed is played by a Frenchman of Moroccan descent.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Captain Saeed.
Well, he
Yeah,
was.
Captain Syed. He does a great job.
Yeah, Cliff Curtis was just. He was that
man.
guy who was like, any other race you need
Yep,
is Cliff.
He's been many different races. Yeah.
Yeah.
The versatility of the New Zealand.
I will admit,
ambiguous.
the Adriana Cruz B plot didn't need to be so explored because it only truly exists as like pipe laying for a plot element, which is the only reason they aren't court-martialed is she aired the whole thing and people backed them up in like a
Right,
PR
right.
arena. So that's definitely a weakness, but I think it also speaks to one of the strengths of the script, which is just as someone who, like, from a craftsmanship level, there's at least I know they taught it to us in playwriting. I don't know if screenwriting class teach this, but it's often useful to have as many layers happening at once as possible and find key choke points where they all come crashing down, and these form your, climactic moments. And I just think the exact moment that Adriana Cruz arrives is so perfectly chosen. Like after they've gone to the bunker, gotten out of the bunker, gone back to the bunker, Wahlberg's been tortured, they just rescued him, Vic is dying, and you forgot she exists.
Right.
And there's no control of the situation, bullets are flying, she shows up and starts filming a report. To me, that kind of layering is like it's just a trick, but it's a trick that's so core to filmmaking, and he handles it really well. In the same way where I think the lung thing kicking in at the same time that we're worried about the people crossing the border
right.
what's going to happen with the gold. It's amazing to get all those things to just hit at once. And I do see a connection to Guy Ritchie there, because Guy Ritchie is like that, where he's like, look at how cool I set up the pieces.
Right.
It's not necessarily important how I set
Sure,
them up,
yeah.
but look how complex the dominoes are. It
Ocean's
goes
11,
everywhere.
yeah.
I wonder though, when you think about it, like, does the film, is it the same without her character in it? Like, does it seem like they needed that?
Do anything?
Like they need
narratively?
her to create the ending that excuses their
I think
criminality.
that's the only reason she
I
exists.
think you're right.
Right, where like before, like, do you think in a first draft he's like, damn, he's like, maybe I need to, like, how am I going to get these guys out of this this situation? It's like, oh wait, journalism,
Also,
the media's
yeah.
attention on this.
He probably felt like the media needed a representative.
Right.
But he didn't do anything with her that comments on the media.
No, he uses her,
Yeah, she's purely
She's
like
a plot
just services the
object.
plot.
Yeah.
which he does to both female journalists, so to speak.
Right.
Oh, he's Bechdel fodder for sure. They've covered David O. Russell.
Yeah.
And I mean, he yells the thing at Lily Tomlin that you're not supposed to yell at a woman.
He's
Very freely.
he's also clearly, and part of me is like, oh, that's cute. But he's also like just a generic troll, like David O. Russell. Like, for example, he heard either he concocted and then like pushed the narrative, or he heard that someone got it wrong when they were talking about the shot of the bullet going through and the bile releasing and stuff. That
And we
somehow
see
people like fake news, like people talking about, they used a real corpse. They used a real corpse. Yeah, they used a real corpse.
Oh, yeah, he said
and
that
then
in interviews.
an interview
yeah.
with Newsweek, he just owned it. He's like, we only had one corpse, so we had to get it right like the first time, and he just leaned
And he's
into
like,
it.
we had to do the sepsis
And that
shot
is
and the collapsing
not
lung
true.
shot in the same corpse.
Absolutely not true. That none of that happened. And like, he got the Morticians Association to like come after him and be like, used a real corpse?
Yeah,
What the
wait,
fuck?
what?
Like this unethical thing? Like he's just leaning into this unethical
Wait, so he
story.
actually did use a corpse?
No, he didn't,
but he
but
just
he
wanted
said
to.
he did.
But
He
he was
thought it
getting
was
off on
funny.
the outrage.
He was
Yeah.
getting off on the outrage.
I also think that, like me, he probably didn't expect that there was a group of morticians looking out for, like, how dare you slander our noble
like
profession.
PETA for dead bodies,
I didn't
basically.
realize there was, a bunch of really, like, creepy pale dudes in suits show up, and they're like, we don't like the way you're portraying the use of corpses.
We'll see you in a box one day, David.
And we'll see if we respect your corpse.
There'll be a lot of mistakes made on that day.
In the milk truck scene, which you mentioned, I do really appreciate, and he said this in interviews, that he wanted it to be a movie where you feel every bullet and each bullet's alive.
Yeah.
And I think he accomplishes that
Definitely.
with that cool, the centerpiece shootout,
Right.
where you get the every bullet impact in slow motion, but also those up at the sky shots of Clooney and Cube, and the clouds are going fast motion. I thought that was a very unique, fresh way to show, when you're in the battle, time is telescoping in and
Yeah.
out. And a lot of shootouts have shown that effect, but never in that, using that visual.
Right. Like, just makes the idea of a gunshot wound so much more vivid, especially when you set
Yeah.
up, like, because even when he does, like, the sepsis thing, sorry, there's sort of, Mark Wahlberg's, like, Troy gets shot,
Yeah.
like, where he
he
recoils
acts like
from.
he got shot from the imaginary
Right,
shot.
right. And you see,
Yeah.
like, a dust hit go off, like, on his clothing or whatever. And, like, that was also, like, probably, even for me, upon first viewing as a teenager, was like, oh, okay, wow. Like, usually just think of a bullet hitting you and you just die versus, like, it's shredding up your body. And these are the other
You're
things.
bleeding, yeah.
Yeah, and there were moments like that kind of helped like it's weird because I'm sort of balancing my adult brain watching it with like what my first reactions were to it.
I think that that's the right place to look at it, though. You know, because like we watched this in a not just a pre 9/11, but like at a youthful age. All of us are around the same age, so like it was also one of the first times that we saw like this kind of culture shock, you know, and that predates a lot of the actual culture shock that we got with the following decade. So there's something there. Yeah. And I think they're both relevant.
But now that you've fully matured, Miles,
and you will
I'm
stop
sure you
growing.
can tell us what was the right thing to do in the Iraq situation.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Please speak directly into the microphone.
Oh man, just let them kill each other, man.
Great.
You know what I mean?
Let's cut that
You
as
cut
our
it.
pull-out
You
word
heard
for
it
the
here
episode.
There it is from the Daily Zeitgeist, dude. Official standpoint of my show. It was so weird though. You know that. Just one of the things about the film that has always stuck with me since first viewing was the Said torture scene.
Yes.
Because it really did humanize the idea of, it didn't obscure the others who we were shooting at in the film and very much made it real. And it's funny to this day, like all my friends who watch it, we can almost like word for word say most of the lines from that scene and that scene alone, because part of it was like
right on.
his like my main men and little
His
affectations were
amazing
funny
affectations.
but then it was also because like when he's like, you know, my wife was crushed, and like it's all this very vivid telling of like
I
what
used
his
to be
life.
a father.
That's one that gets me is I have a daughter. Why did you tell me about Crystal, my main man?
Yeah.
So you'd know we're both fathers. I'm not a father, my main man. Don't you remember? My son is dead now.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and it like blew my head as a kid. I was like, oh my God. And it's funny, like, because all the time I was telling one of my friends today that I was talking about the movie, and then he was like, oh, are the bombs going to come? And I was like, the bombs. Also the way he would pronounce bomb phonetically. Like, I don't know, there's something that even like for the most immature kids, or I don't know if we were like just over time became more empathetic, but that was just like one of those
kids,
things.
You know, we're all
I mean,
kids.
look, we were setting off smoke bombs and garbage
There's plenty
cans
of war movies now that question that delve into like the dark side of war, but I think this was early in the mainstream AAA movie, so to speak, doing that.
Yes, it predates Black Hawk Down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know?
or does it in a way that it wasn't totally preachy or so aggressive where like it was believable, and then even if you weren't that savvy, like it was something that stuck with you, and then you would,
and it really just says it's really complex, which is true.
Yeah.
Can you think how it feel inside your heart if I bum your daughter?
I think
oh yeah, and then he like pictures his
Worse
like,
than death.
like his wife.
That's
holding
right,
their
my
kid.
man.
worse than
Worse
death.
than death.
That's a line that hit me this time. Worse than death.
It really reminded me of, do you guys know one of my favorite poetry lines is Pablo Neruda, the blood of the children ran through the streets like the blood of children. Like, we're going to divert you away. There's going to be a euphemism.
What's
no,
the worst thing you
look
can
at
think
it.
of?
It's the blood of
It's
children.
literally
It's
that.
not
Right.
anything else. Yeah.
The metaphor, it's the
Fuck
thing we
metaphor.
compare.
Yeah.
The thing we compare to in a metaphor when we want to have
It's
hyperbole.
literally happening.
Yeah.
We've reached that point. Yeah,
I
it's
think
a great line.
that's a great line, and this movie definitely does that from a metaphorical standpoint. Like they shoot like the CDs, the milk on the ground. Like
I love when they you first see their Humvee. They're throwing Nerf balls, listening to the Beach Boys, and there's Bart Simpson doll in
Right,
the
on
car.
the hood,
It's like
right.
America, American
you know what?
capitalism.
you know what's even crazy?
It's actually Bach first.
Bach
It's
and
Bach
then Beach
first.
Boys. You're right.
You know what's
'Cause
even
I
crazy?
get around.
Yeah, Ice Cube putting on Beach Boys is hilarious. But what's crazy is that like it's almost like there's no way that this movie could have thought this was going to happen because of the political situation that happened post 1999. So how could he know? But they re-released the film with another documentary about like the Middle East and the war in 2004 because they thought it was relevant 5 years after it released. So it's like, and that was the studio wanting to make more money.
Of course.
So it's like it's like bottled up in this weird stew of like, I can see why it's a bipolar movie, and so that's where I'm coming
And you've
back
made
again.
me see that now.
It's got
Like the
so
joke-
many problems, but
The
the
joke
problems,
quotient is too high for what it's trying to accomplish if it's
Yeah.
serious about what it's
Right.
trying
like
to
I
accomplish.
really
yeah.
believe that this movie, and it's less that I this movie is not mediocre. It's just a movie made by a maniac that happened to get a few things really right about the fact that we are in a world that is full of maniacs, you know, like
right.
like he's just like
Takes
this
one to know one.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so like it just grabs from all different elements that you're like, what's this now? Why is this happening? Okay. Like it just feels like the narrative is like very loose and doesn't like people don't get their just deserves, and then they do sometimes. It's just very strange.
And yet there's moments where you can clearly see very distinct orchestration. Like I said, when like she shows up at this point because it's the maximum height of tension where she could show up. I do think it's interesting. We got to close out soon, so I'm going to clear my trivia board. But this bears on what you just said. While they were editing the movie, David O. Russell attended a fundraiser for George W. Bush. So
this is a great one. That's
how relevant the movie was. That's interesting to me. It's like if they made Vice like, well, Dick Cheney was in office, you know? It's weird. He was at a Warner Brothers executive's house. He didn't know George W. Bush was going to be there, but he was there. Russell walked up to Bush and said, "Hi, I'm editing my newest film. It will question your father's legacy in Iraq." And Bush shot back, "Well, I guess I'll just have to go back and finish the job." And this was before he ever set those events in motion, so that's spoopy.
Yeah, well, I think we always, I mean, he
had that plan from fucking day one.
Yeah, his dad was like, "You better go back." I'll
make
use some
it right.
strategery.
Okay, I'll clear out the boards here. Jeff Bridges wanted to play Gates, but was turned down.
I saw that as well.
And I just love him. He would have made it better.
But he had to sign on to Big Lebowski, which...
No. This is what's crazy to me. The studio turned him down because Big Lebowski had just done so poorly at the box office. They thought he was box office poison. Are you fucking kidding me? Big Lebowski is like one of the most important movies of our lifetimes.
100%.
That's so funny because we just, around the same time, we just covered Lebowski. We also just covered Punch Drunk Love with Teresa Lee, and we were talking about how they were taking big gambles on P.T. Anderson. David O. Russell, not so much.
Right.
No, and that's what I think you're right that like, because they talk all about intense pushback from the studios. I think you're right that the joke quotient is probably a result of the process.
Yeah.
They were probably like, can it be a little funnier? People like funny.
If you're going to make people uncomfortable with why we're over there and like fighting this resource war, but let's say it's about this other thing.
And they really pushed hard to try and get rid of the exploding cow, which is so fucking mild by today's standards.
Right.
100%.
I also know that the Warner Brothers came down hard on them for... there was some insinuations about the pedophilia rumors surrounding Michael Jackson during that scene. Yeah. And they were like, you can't do that. So it's like, it's bottled up in all this like censorship about stuff, but we also like, we want to package it so
but we're trying to make an edgy statement, but we still want the $50 million budget.
Pump the brakes a little bit on the truth, you know?
Right.
So,
but still make it look like the Americans are saving the poor browns over there.
Yes, please.
But make one of the Americans brown, because then it's okay.
And then like, is it really white savior? I mean, Ice Cube was black.
We have a black friend. He's in the movie.
One thing I thought was really interesting is that Troy Barlow's carpet store was in Torrance, where Dirk Diggler's character is from.
Oh.
That's a weird pull.
I like to imagine then that Troy Barlow has a micro penis to like balance out the universe.
Yeah. And Conrad Spike Jones has an enormous dong.
I mean, in that chronology, couldn't Dirk Diggler have fought in the Iraq War?
I haven't seen Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights happens in like the 70s.
No, but like 1980 is when it starts going all downhill.
Well, it depends which Iraq War you mean.
Yeah, well, but then this one took place though in the first Iraq War, so 91. Dirk Diggler was still a young. I don't know. I'm like wanting to imagine a David O. Russell, P.T. Anderson universe.
He gets back. He gets back.
Wahlberg truther.
Yeah. He gets back from surviving torture. By the way, fun fact: Mark Wahlberg was actually electrocuted in the torture scenes because he can't act, and he knew it. So that was the only way it was going to look believable.
And was that David's call or was that Mark's call? Had to have been Mark
Wahlberg has said,
it,
and you never know what's PR or what's not.
Yeah.
But publicly, the story is that he wanted it to help him get into the role.
I love that if David O. Russell just goes, yeah, it'll be fine. Fucking juice this motherfucker.
He can't act. We need him to act in this scene. Shock the shit out of him.
What the hell, bro?
Yeah. It's a Clooney prank, dude. Yeah. It's a Clooney prank. I don't know.
He clearly likes working with David O. Russell, though.
And also, as we mentioned, Spike Jonze was David O. Russell's buddy. He wrote the part specifically for him, but I didn't know they practiced the Southern accent for weeks and weeks every night over the phone until, David O. Russell was happy with the Southern accent. But the reason it had to be over the phone was Spike Jonze was busy directing Being John Malkovich, which is such like a cerebral, bizarre, weird. I love that movie too. But can you imagine him directing Being John Malkovich, then going home from set and practicing his racist Southern accent on the phone
with
for David O.
Russell.
Russell? It's just a weird life.
Hey, Troy gave me this haircut. It's a badass haircut.
Another.
Oh, that's one of my favorite sequences is we're like, oh, unless you guys really love your day jobs. And they cut back to everyone's day job. And Spike Jonze is just shooting shit in a junkyard with a shotgun. I was always
Comes
like,
back and he goes,
I love you.
I don't really have a day job. Just because there are too many jokes doesn't mean some of the jokes aren't great.
Yeah.
Like Jamie Kennedy with the night vision goggles. They're night vision goggles. They don't work during the day. Pause, pause, pause. Yeah, they kind of work.
Yeah, they kind of work.
Another thing about David O. Russell is that the story was written by. Now, this guy is not necessarily the greatest guy, but his name's John Ridley, and he wrote a screenplay because he wanted to write a screenplay really quickly, I believe.
See how fast he could sell a screenplay.
Yeah, that's it. And he wrote it in like 2 weeks.
And
got it sold in
within
6
a
weeks
month.
or something.
So good for you.
Wow.
But
you
that's not the
motherfucker.
point of the story. I mean, that's just like Holly weird.
Right.
But like David O. Russell took his name off of it.
And it says written by David O. Russell.
And
right.
Ridley sued.
and
won.
And all he got was a story by credit, even though he wrote the original
But he got
draft.
money. Yeah.
Oh,
But
David O. Russell didn't do a thing to it?
Yeah.
David O. Russell
No,
wants-
he wrote it.
He co-wrote
Oh, okay.
the screenplay.
But
He just
then
like
he
took
just
it over
But he
and
took his
rewrote
name
it.
on.
Right.
But he's like not giving. That's what.
I think he
Yeah.
wants to
Even
be viewed
writers,
as a
co-writers do
Hitchcock
that.
or a Kubrick,
Right.
And he's even willing to lie to cement that legacy. Like he
Yes.
wants to be P.T. Anderson at the
Yes.
minimum.
Right.
Yes, he's the Steven Seagal.
Yeah, it's like even though the Smashing Pumpkins are dope, don't get me wrong, but do you ever hear Billy Corgan nowadays do these long rants about how they should be remembered, like they should still be relevant, like Radiohead or whatever? And I'm like,
Right. No.
you weren't that good. You think you're that good. You were just a good band,
Right.
for a brief period.
And now, like, what kind of hot takes has he had politically?
Oh well, now he's all the way
He's
to
like
the right,
like
yeah.
alt-right nearly, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Makes sense.
Oh, Billy.
Oh Billy.
Oh, Billy.
Well, as we end every episode, that's that mattress man.
No.
I'm confusing.
This
our
has been a
episode. I know.
podcast by David O. Russell. I'm David O. Russell. I'm
I'm
here
also
with David O. Russell
Russell.
and David O. Russell.
Yeah, where can the people find you?
On Twitter, Instagram at Miles Gray, on podcast apps, on the Daily Zeitgeist every day.
And frequently on other How Stuff Works.
Yeah. When
network
I have time,
shows,
it's
when
tough.
you guest.
When I
yeah.
dunk my head into the news abyss every day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's real positive.
Are
out
you a
there.
stand-up guy? Do you do any kind of live?
No, I
component? Okay.
used to do a lot of improv, and then I had so many jobs. Like, I mean, I was like in lobbying for a number of years, and wasn't in comedy.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I came back and started just like doing. I needed a job, so I just started making digital content for like big media companies. So yeah, I'm just I'm an unorthodox.
my own
comedian
Jack
out here.
synopsized it differently. We had lunch. I was like, what's Miles' deal? Like, how'd you meet him? And he goes, he's a lobbyist.
Yeah, I mean that's how he met me. That's how he says he met me.
That's fair, I guess. Well, no, he said he met you through the process of looking for someone to co-host the Daily Zeitgeist, which I could have gathered.
Well,
but-
I think we met because of Rosie.
yeah, that's what he said.
But yeah, a lobbyist. Yeah, I mean that I did. Do, oh god, that destroyed my soul.
I would just take that as an insult if someone characterized me as a lobbyist. No offense.
No, I
Depends
think
on
it-
what you're lobbying.
Oh, dude, when I was high school sophomore year AP government class, as a treat, they had a lobbyist come in and talk about
As
what
a
their
treat?
job was like.
The little.
Were
And
they
he
drunk?
literally said stuff like, "It's a job that requires a great deal of moral flexibility, shall we say?" And I'm like, "So you're evil? It's just a job, an evil
No,
man."
sometimes I bend good, sometimes I bend evil.
It's like thank you for smoking, right? Thank
Oh,
you
like,
for
do you want
smoking.
chocolate
He
or
comes in and
vanilla?
says,
Yeah.
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 And he's like, "Chocolate because I just like it." He's like, "No, vanilla because I run a smear campaign against chocolate. It's bad." Yeah.
It's
All right, it's
Anyway.
that time to hit the old dusty trail.
Any final thoughts from anybody?
I already said my torrents thing. Nah.
Cool. Then
Great.
there's a cut away.
See you next
early.
time.
Yep. See you next time.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!